Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Destination Vancouver's 120th Annual General Meeting. Please welcome to the stage President, Cantrav Services and Chair, Destination Vancouver, Matthew Coyne.
Wow, thank you for such a warm introduction. I don't know, I can't remember the last time I was cheered. Well, I can, but it's not appropriate. What an amazing to see such a full house here, so this is just fantastic. Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us at our 120th AGM. It is wonderful to see so many members here today in this historic venue. We're young. We're actually young compared to Hotel Vancouver. First of its three iterations began in 1888 here, so it's amazing. As Lucas mentioned, I am Matt Coyne, President of Cantrav Services, and I am delighted to be starting my first full term as Chair of Destination Vancouver's Board of Directors. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you, Destination Vancouver members, members of the board, industry partners, and guests. Let me begin by acknowledging the land on which we are gathering today is the traditional unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. Vancouver is a young city on an ancient land. At Destination Vancouver, we're committed to learning from our Indigenous partners and to elevate and support Indigenous cultural development and economic opportunities. We acknowledge and thank Indigenous Tourism BC as our partner on this learning journey. I'd like to take a moment to thank and recognize our partners for today's event, the wonderful Fairmont Hotel Vancouver, Stage Set NAV from ProShow Audiovisual, and Vision Event Photography, capturing the moments. Now let's get started. I have been advised by our auditors that indeed we have a quorum to conduct the meeting. I was a little worried. Fortunately, they're rest assured, we are here. I'll ask for motions to be moved, seconded, and voted on. I'm pleased to say all voting takes place this year in person. Right? For voting representatives, you've received a numbered yellow ballot on your way in. And to cast your vote, please raise your yellow card high in the air and hold it steady until counted by our audit team. I don't have a card. I'm supposed to demonstrate according to my orange notes here, and hold it steady, as seen by Joanne with PDS. Thank you. Thank you. I now formally call to order the 120th Annual General Meeting of the Metro Vancouver Convention and Visitors Bureau, better known as Destination Vancouver. But first, I'm now pleased to ask Willie Lewis and the Eagle Song Dancers to come up to the stage and lead a traditional welcome. Willie?
Oh Hello. I'll use this one. I don't need a stepladder. How's it going? Everybody say real good. Us too. We're real good. Thank you for including us in your day. We're Eagle Song dancers from Squamish Nation with relatives, of course, to the neighboring nations, Hamusqueam and Tsleil-Waututh. What we're providing for you today is a traditional welcome, and some of your faces look familiar. Okay, moving right along. The next song that we're going to sing, well, the first song we sang is a canoe song, bringing our canoe ashore, so that you can identify who we are by the song and the nature of our visit. So we are coming in peace, and that song speaks about the sacredness of the journey, of what it takes to do a journey, a canoe journey. We do those every summer, and they're like about 2 weeks long, and they're all alcohol, drug-free, and we travel hundreds of miles to visit neighboring nations to spend some time with them. This year we're going to a place called Muckleshoot in Nisqually territory, and there'll be about 150 canoes paddling from their villages to that location. And we're exercising that protocol for you this evening or this afternoon. Is it evening yet? No, not evening, okay. Well, good morning, everybody. The next song we sing is a song for blessing and a song for neutralizing any negativity that may have been left on the floor here, heaviness. So as a part of our teachings, we say that outside on the wall, there's an imaginary nail in which we invite you to hang any heaviness, negativity, and leave it outside. It has no business being with us here when we're together as a family. So we want to guarantee that our time together is going to be successful. So we have a little bit of rules that guarantee that our time is going to be good. That's one of them. The other one is that as soon as you come through the door, you're automatically family. And we expect you to participate and be engaged in whatever the ceremony is. Don't worry, we're not going to make you dance. Maybe. The song is Tum Tum Slalom. You notice the ladies are using cedar boughs, and that is to sweep any negativity up so that we can continue on a good way together. Everybody say, real good. Real good. Thank you. Oh, see you.
OCM. So the next song we're going to share with you this afternoon is a song of pays tribute to the animal kingdom, pays tribute to the one that flies highest above the sky, the one that, kind of like us, gathers within the thousands, spakos, eagles. And so during the wintertime, at the end of the eagle's lifespan, at the end of the salmon's lifespan, the eagles gather in the thousands at the Chiacamas Valley to feed, to gather, kind of like I said, like us. You know, they find a new mate, find new territory, spread a few rumors. No, I'm just kidding. So, escata spakos, gathering of eagles, because they gather like we do and have all those good feelings, those good squallowings. Osiam.
Haichka. Can you say Haichka? Can you say Mukhia? Can't tell you what that means, but thanks for saying that. That's made our day. We can go home now. Actually, say it again. I want to see if you got it right. Mukhia. Mukhia baby. Mukhia power. Wish I could tell you what that meant. Okay, maybe. It means belly button. Belly button power, yeah. Yeah, you can tell, you can separate the warriors from the other guys. Our closing song is a song that is attributed to honor. It comes from our CM that went over to England in 1906. 3 of our chiefs went over, our CM, and they were awarded an audience with King Edward VII. They had a little bit of help through the poet Pauline Johnson, you may have heard of her, who ended up residing in Vancouver and being close friends with our great-great-grandfather, Chief Joe Capilano. And prior to them leaving to go to England, they were given what they call travel insurance. They got songs that were given to them for protection, to keep them strong. And they used one of these songs to enter the throne room of Buckingham Palace. We're going to do that song for you right now. It is today known as the Chief's Honor Song, or Hope Hope Che. And we close with that, raising our hands in appreciation and gratitude. This gesture is called Kayachtin, and it is a way for us to acknowledge the high spirit that lives inside of everyone. And we raise our hands like this, Ho CM, and we say Ho CM to CM, that high position. So everybody go real good. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. Ho CM.
So Willie and the Eagle Song Dancers, thank you very much for joining us today. How fitting. In fact, we're honored. We've swept away the negativity, and we're gathering like eagles. So good. As advised through Destination Vancouver's AGM invitation, and as seen on the screen behind me, today's agenda. I ask now for a motion that the agenda for today's AGM be adopted as circulated. Thank you. May I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Are there any questions or comments regarding the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your yellow cards. All those against, now please raise your cards. Wonderful, thank you. Motion carried. As directed through the AGM invite, the minutes from the last year's AGM were included as a link in the invitation. I now ask for a motion that the minutes of the 119th Annual General Meeting held on May 19th, 2022 be adopted as circulated. I have a motion? Excuse me, and a seconder? Thank you. Are there any questions or comments regarding the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your yellow card. Thank you. Now, any of those against, please raise your card. Thank you. Motion carried. Now on to the financials. Destination Vancouver's 2022 audited financial statements were reviewed and approved by the Finance and Audit Committee and endorsed by the Board of Directors. I would like to call up our Treasurer, Pete Mahoney, Managing Partner, Mahoney's Tavern, to present Destination Vancouver's 2022 financial report. Pete?
Wow, great crowd out here today. Nice turnout. Chair, members, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am pleased to present the financial report for our fiscal year ended December 31st, 2022. In April, our auditors, KPMG, met with the Finance and Audit Committee to review the results of our 2022 financial audit. Chair and members, I am pleased to report that there were no material issues arising from the audit, and the Bureau received a clean opinion on our financial statements, which have been made available to the members. Here are a few financial highlights from fiscal 2022. The Bureau ended the year with a net surplus of $2.1 million. As 2022 was the first year of rebuilding post-pandemic, we saw an increase in both revenues and operation costs as compared to the prior year. Actual revenues totaled $22.2 million, an increase of $8.8 million over the prior year. Our main funding source, the MRDT, or hotel tax, totaled $20.5 million, and while $12.7 million higher than 2021, it did represent an 8% decline, or a $1.8 million shortfall compared to 2019. The increase in revenues is a result of both higher occupancy rate and a higher average daily rates as compared to 2021. Other revenues consist of government grants and program-generated revenues. Through the Business Events and Conference Restart Fund, our organization received $2.9 million over a 2-year period, $1.9 million of which was received in 2022, and the remaining $1 million was received in 2023. Business conferences and events are a large contributor to the tourism industry and bring great economic benefit to the region, and we want to thank the ministry again for their support. Program-generated revenues, which consisted predominantly of membership fees, advertising buy-in opportunities, and sponsorships, totaled $0.5 million overall, in line with the prior year. Program expenses totaled $20.1 million, an increase of $8.5 million over prior year and in line with 2019 expenditures. In addition to increased operational capacity, specific promotional expenses included destination promotions such as the spring, summer, and fall This is Vancouver consumer campaign, as well as new partnerships with Michelin and AEG Worldwide, both of which Royce will speak about in his presentation. Destination promotion is indeed a team event, and we want to thank all our partners, including Sport Hosting Vancouver, Vancouver Hotel Destination Association, the Vancouver Airport Authority, Vancouver Convention Center, and so many others for supporting our collective efforts to accelerate and increase visitation to Vancouver. The Bureau ended fiscal 2022 with a healthy balance sheet and is well-positioned to continue to build and grow the destination's visitor economy in the coming years. I now move that the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2022, as reviewed and approved by the board, be adopted as circulated. Thank you. May I have a seconder? Thank you. Any discussions or questions? All those in favor, please raise your yellow cards. All those against, please follow the same process. Motion carried. I now ask for a motion that KPMG LLP be reappointed as the Bureau's financial auditor for fiscal 2023. Thank you. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Jeff. Any discussions or questions? All those in favor, please raise your yellow cards. All those against, please raise your yellow cards. Motion carried. This concludes the financial report.
Thanks very much, Pete. And now it's my pleasure to present the chair's report, or as most board members are more familiar with, just sort of Matt's comments. Rather than looking backwards, as one would generally do at an AGM, I want to look ahead. And I, for one, look ahead with real positivity and optimism. When we held our AGM last year on May 19th, if you were like me, you're probably cautiously optimistic, perhaps even tentative, even with the cruise ships returning to port after 2 years. If you can imagine, it's only been 1 full year. I actually constantly remind our clients that we're dealing with to let them know that, in fact, our industry has only been open, not just a year. But to think how far we've come, and the industry has built back more robustly than anticipated, with, of course, a few challenges along the way. Amidst concerns about inflation and a pending recession, people have clearly wanted to travel. They wanted to connect. They wanted to reconnect with the world, reconnect with friends and family. They wanted to gather. We've seen that sort of pent-up demand corporately. And I have firsthand experience in that, and I'd quickly like to recognize my team members at Cantrav in managing this almost sort of relentless demand that we've experienced over the past 18 months. I'm extremely grateful. But I ain't complaining. I am not complaining. Destination Vancouver's business strategy looks out over a 6-year horizon. And when the board did our scenario planning, we broke it into 3 stages. And we considered what would it take to get through them: surviving, striving, and thriving. I think we can all agree that we quickly moved through the first 2 phases. And now we're fully focused on making the right decisions, creating the right programs and campaigns, and being in the right markets to get us to thriving. As we've just heard from Pete regarding our 2022 financials, and of course you hear from Royce in his presentation on our forecast ahead and the programs and partnerships underway, indeed, the future is bright. However, while I say that, as an industry and as members, we can't passively approach the next few years and simply rely on this momentum or the reputation of Vancouver, or in fact the resiliency of our industry. Nor can we rely on the whim of other industries or voices to influence our future. It's critical that we leverage this momentum and continue to be active participants in our collective future. We need to continue to support the evolution of Destination Vancouver's mandate. We need to engage, collaborate, and work together, amplify our voices, and the collective efforts to design a future that is sustainable, that has the infrastructure and resources and products and experiences for this desired state. Of course, all built on a destination brand that reflects the essence of our city and the heartbeat of our community. That's how our destination will succeed. That's how our businesses and our industry will thrive. And as we look to our future, I offer tremendous thanks and appreciation to all of you in advance. And I'd specifically like to recognize and thank Royce and the senior team and all the wonderful staff at Destination Vancouver for the wonderful job that they do, the dedication and the commitment and the value that you bring every day on behalf of us, the members, and our destination. I thank you. We appreciate you. Now, onto our Board of Directors for the 2023-24 year. Destination Vancouver's board focuses on strategy, risk management, leadership development, and government and public policy that affect our industry. Our goal is to be a highly effective board, a strategic advantage for the organization. And you know what? We actually want to be one of the best boards in Vancouver, too. To be a member of the board, it does take a commitment. And we're honored to have such a qualified and skilled leaders in our industry that are wishing to serve. We do ask a lot for them. Recognize that, and never more so than over the past 2 years, when they not only have been volunteering for us on behalf of our industry, all the while trying to ensure that their businesses not just survive and strive, but also thrive. There's nothing more powerful and productive than an engaged board. And as the chair, I can't thank you enough for your time, your commitment to this organization, and your unwavering support. Speaking of support, and I'm not sure if she's in the room, but I'd like to quickly recognize Kelly Cooper, who provides so much support to the board and me personally. Thank you. For those board members that are here today, I will now ask you to please stand and remain standing when I call your name. And yes, I know it's hard, the audience, I know, but try and hold your applause to the end, I know. Graham Ben, Dual General Manager, JW Marriott Park Vancouver and Douglas Hotel. Joanne Burns-Miller, CEO, Pacific Destination Services. Michael Cameron, President, Grouse Mountain Resort. Rehana Din, Chief Operating Officer, BC Pavco. Corey Fawcett, CEO, Zowie Software. Jeff Leung, Executive Director, Hotel Division, Pacific Reach Properties and the Hotel Belmont. Mike McNaney, VP and Chief External Affairs with the Vancouver Airport Authority. Jens Mosker, Regional Vice President and Pacific Northwest and General Manager of the Fairmont Pacific Rim Hotel. Jeff Robbins, Vice President, Product Development and Marketing for Tradable Bits Media. Megan Sewell, General Manager, Sewell's Marina. Darren Simpson, General Manager, the Burrard Hotel. Dave Stevens, General Manager, Days in Vancouver Downtown. Chuck Wee, VP of Pacific Northwest of Hudson Pacific Properties. And of course, myself. Thank you very much. I'd like to quickly take an opportunity to thank 2 outgoing board members. They've made tremendous contributions to Destination Vancouver and our industry. First, our past chair, Robin Vicker, Unfortunately, she's not able to be here with us today, but leading the board through the worst of the pandemic, all the while steering YVR, was just a remarkable feat. Robin's leadership and insight and actually direct link to the aviation sector was so valuable to us as a board as we were leading this organization and hopefully our industry here through the pandemic. Not to mention her passion for the city and the brand of Vancouver will be remembered. And we've generously donated to the Pacific Assistant Dog Societies in Robin's name. And with an unblemished record as treasurer, a huge thanks to Pete Mahoney, our treasurer, who's leaving the board after 6 years. We can't thank you enough for your contributions, Pete. As treasurer, stewarding us through the pandemic as well. Again, no small task. Your approach to your role on the board will be missed, not only bringing your hospitality expertise to the table, but also with the lens of the broader industry is always appreciated. And personally, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize that you consistently ensured that we kept our values and culture and staff well-being at the forefront during your tenure. So thank you very much. In recognition of Pete's service to the board, we have made a donation in his name to Kidsport BC, which raises funds across the province to remove financial barriers for those kids that may not be able to play organized sports. Thank you again, Pete. Now, let's bring the formal part of our AGM to a close, and we're actually going to change it up a bit this year. After we finish the official business of today's meeting, Royce Schwinn will give his president's report, and following that, we'll move into a Q&A with Royce, Richard Porges of Destination British Columbia, and Marcia Walden of Destination Canada. And I'm delighted to say that we've got Hayley Wooden, Editor-in-Chief of Business in Vancouver, will be helping moderate the discussion. May I have a motion to close the 120th Annual General Meeting of Destination Vancouver? Thank you. A seconder? Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your yellow cards. Great. Thank you. And all those against, please raise your cards. Thank you. Motion carried. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Royce Schwinn, Destination Vancouver's President and CEO. Royce. Thank you. We're a little fiscally responsible here. This allows for stage set. We didn't have the budget to do a full reveal. I know it's in both Joanne and my heart, it's just painstaking that we couldn't offer this for you, but we thought, you know what? We're still not quite through the pandemic. We're still not quite through. We got to be a little mindful of our budget, right?
We absolutely do, especially when you're facing all of the board right there, right in the front. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate it. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. And you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to ask you to do today, because that was not good. It is beautiful and sunny out, but you wouldn't know it because we've closed the curtains as much as we possibly can. You've not gone to the beach. You've gone here. So let's try that again. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you. Yay. Hello, bonjour, ni hao, hasapka. Great to see you all here, and really want to thank you for making time to come to our 120th AGM. That's a heck of a milestone to celebrate. We have a lot to get through. I've got a lot to get through, and I want to get through that, stay high-level tactics. I really want to get to the panel. So my presentation is going to start off a little bit slow and then quietly taper off. Okay, good. You're in the right room. The insurance convention is over in the next room. That's the serious room. Okay, so let's kick off our story by setting the stage, if you will. As Matt talked about our revised mandate and our purpose, we needed to look forward, we needed to progress as an organization, we needed to think about greater transformation because that is what our industry has gone through. We needed to match that inside of our organization to keep up with you. And we also really needed to live our purpose and deliver on our mandate, but by asking ourselves two fundamental questions always. The first one is, how do we stay relevant and how do we show value? And we use those as filters for all of the work that we do inside Destination Vancouver. That work is then anchored in a triple bottom line. That is prosperity, planet, and people. Now, we set a goal a few years ago as we went through the muck of this, and it was $15 billion by 2026. And that goal is pretty close to what our visitor economy was in 2019, which was the 5th consecutive record year of growth. We've set it out a little bit because we believe it's going to take till 2026 to get there. Because what created the business in 2019 is not going to be what's going to create the business to get us to $15 billion by 2026. It's going to be different. You already know that. It is different. We also kept our strategy simple and consistent, rooted in clear objectives, but we wanted to stay nimble. Some of those skills that we learned going through the pandemic. 3 primary focus areas: competitiveness, sustainability, and accountability. Now, we know within those 3 major focus areas, you'll never fully check the box, and you shouldn't, because it is about progression. It is about evolving. It is about movement forward constantly. And it was also designed to take advantage of our destination strengths and our opportunities. So we've got a really solid business plan that we're working from and continue to work off of. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of a forecast. What are we seeing going forward? I'm not talking about rain, of course, because it is amazing out there, so we'll wipe that away, but I will talk about visitation. So what we know today about 2022 is that we saw approximately 8.8 million visitors to Vancouver, just below the high water mark in 2019 of 11 million. But that's a good pickup in 2022. If you think about it, the pandemic really ended the last measures in October. So good business and good work in 2022, all things considered. So recently, though, and I don't know if you've caught this, many of our major industry partners came out with revised forecasts for 2023, and that's good news. Air Canada, Marriott International, Royal Caribbean, or Caribbean, depending on where you're from, and Norwegian Cruise Lines. All upped earnings, all upped forecasts for visitation and revenue. So there's some good positive signals out there in terms of what we're seeing in 2023. Let's talk a little bit about air arrivals. Air arrivals rebuilding robustly. We're serving over 100 destinations out of YVR, expanding routes, expanding frequencies. You probably know if you've traveled, trying to get seats on aircraft. It's a good problem to have. New airlines coming to Vancouver, new route, direct to buy. So good signs, building blocks going back in place. Let's talk about cruise. The ships are clearly back. No kidding, hey? Beautiful sight to see. Record number of ships came to Vancouver in 2022. Port of Vancouver is projecting 8% growth year over year in 2022. That was a record year. This year is going to be a record year on top of that year. 331 ships are expected into Vancouver this year, delivering just over 1 million passengers. Let's talk about citywides. And citywide defined as 1,000 or more attendees to a conference from outside the city, from outside Vancouver. Our hotel performance for Vancouver sits in the top 3rd in all of North America. That is outstanding, and I hear about it from my peers who ask questions, why and what are you doing? And I can't tell them, and I won't. However, we are building a very strong calendar of business. Other destinations are having challenges rebuilding business events. They are not seeing the same level of booked business in their destinations, and we know that our destination is a destination of choice because of what we do here and how Team Vancouver works together. So 2018 was a historical high. 33 citywides to the city. 2018, 2023, we're expecting to maybe be there, maybe a little bit more. We know that business is looking solid into 24 and 25 as well. So good on us, Team Vancouver, for building this business. Now, despite the good news, there are, of course, risks, and many risks. VUCA, you've probably heard that expression. If you hadn't, it's the acronym for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And when we used to talk about it in the olden days, pre-pandemic, it was a cycle that happened every once in a while. It's now the ongoing state of business. It's the ongoing state of being that we're living through. Our risks are interdependent or dependent, but however they play, they conspire against the traveler to foil their traveler plans. And that's what we have to monitor. Workforce, supply chain, inflation, affordability, availability, I could go on, there's several more, but the impact our competitiveness. Now, as you know, we've talked about this earlier this year when we released the report, hotel capacity is an issue for Vancouver. When we published that report in March, what we found was that since 2010, if you hadn't seen the report, that in the Lower Mainland, we have lost just over 2,000 hotel rooms in the Lower Mainland. 1,500 of those hotel rooms are right downtown that are gone for various reasons. So that study identified what we needed to do to close the gap for hotel rooms. And what it said was, if we're going to match the demand, and the demand is certainly there, to catch up to that, we need approximately 10,000 hotel rooms, new hotel rooms in Vancouver by 2050, and 20,000 in Metro Vancouver. When we look at where we are right now, we know that there's some projects in the hopper. We still figure we're about a decade and a half behind to catch up. So we have to be very careful in how we work together and how we manage this incredible global demand coming to Vancouver. Lucky us, good problem to have. Okay, so new realities, and as we manage our way through VUCA steadily, let's not forget our number one reason for being, and that is the traveler. Now, we know that the effects of the last 3 years have impacted the traveler. We see that in the insights and the reports and the research that we do. It's verified this. And the traveler journey that we try to map out, our strategies against the path to purchase, is this kind of linear path. It's a little bit wavy, a little bit shaky, but it kind of runs across, sort of a standard path to purchase. However, trying to map the path to purchase today with what's going on is a little bit like trying to map out and understand an atom, if you really think about how it's shaking. That actually kind of looks cool. So think about that path to purchase that you saw and think about it like that now. That's what we're trying to unravel in the traveler's brain. So at the center of that, the nucleus, that dot represents Vancouver. The electrons cycling around the atom are the considerations. And they are positively or negatively charging our travelers' decisions about the destination. So we have to constantly dig in there and try to get the destination awareness there to capture them, to get them into that nucleus. It is real time and complexity in our travelers' brains, trying to figure out how to map it out. The other thing that we think about is how we think about those traditional business models. And we talk about them all the time, B2B or B2C. We would argue that we need to start thinking about that a little bit differently. And this is more like humans to ecosystem, because that's the complexity and the wide world that we're now dealing with. That's the broader template, if you will, that we have to navigate our way through. So, as we're thinking about all of that, and just when you think you've got it all mapped out, boom. The biggest disruptor comes along, and you've heard about it, generative AI, released last fall. GPT-4, as of the last couple of months, in its version that was released, has 100 trillion data parameters that it works off of. 100 trillion. It's a slight improvement over the paltry 175 billion data parameters that it was released with. That is the speed and the progression of generative AI. Code writing code. Now, travelers are already using it. You may have already used it yourself in terms of planning travel. We know companies like Expedia and Kayak have GPT-4 plugins built into their websites and on mobile. In fact, I was at the Expedia annual conference yesterday, and they were talking a lot about that. And they were in conversations with ChatGPT for months on their getting ready for the release to load it up because they knew that was something the travelers were going to be looking for. We've taken this incredibly disruptive technology and we have put it in people's hands to use. And we are barely just scratching the surface. We are really thinking about that inside Destination Vancouver. More on that in a moment. We are excited and wary at the same time, believe me. But we do know, and we should know as an industry, that we are working from a position of strength. We've got all of these incredible major sporting events coming to Vancouver. Now, you might have one burning question so far since I got up on the stage, and that is, why are you wearing a pair of gray Adidas Gazelle sneakers? Right here. Because today, FIFA officially launched 2026 on social media. And the 2026 tweet that went out was actually a picture of Alphonso Davies and Team Canada. That is the launch of 2026, and it was Canada. Fantastic. Now, along with that, we've got all kinds of great cultural events that are coming up. Pride, as you know, they have looked at their agenda and they expanded it 2 days. Some great changes in that internationally recognized gathering in our city, which is so important, supporting our values, if we're well, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And as well, up-and-coming and grassroots initiatives like the Light Up Chinatown Festival, which is such a great piece of work to bring life and energy back down to the streets in Chinatown, such an important and historical neighborhood for Vancouver, part of our overall storytell. And I believe year 3 is September of this year, the 10th and the 11th. So if you haven't gone, go. It's a great event. So we've had a lot of success working together in terms of our citywide business. It is foundational business, as I mentioned. We're booking business 3, 4, 5, and even more years out in advance. But we're also thinking quite intentionally about our need periods. It's not about just jamming up the business in the summer, but it's looking at shoulder where we have room, competitive rates, those kinds of things, and trying to spread that business out throughout the season and trying to reduce some of the hills and valleys. Also important, though, is booking repeat business, like SIGGRAPH. And SIGGRAPH, we've been lucky to get here in 2011, 2014, 2018, 2022, and we've rebooked SIGGRAPH for 2025. That brings between 10 and 15,000 visitors into our city, clearly a huge economic impact. Let's talk a little bit about client visits too. So 2022 was a great year of collaboration and support, Team Vancouver working together. We hosted over 200 clients, M&C, travel trade, media, travel influencers. That creates champions and new influencers for our destination. And that program, those programs are really, really important. And we are starting to be impacted by our success. And what we're starting to find now, though, with all of this good news, is that we're having some challenges being able to book people here and finding rooms and space and cost. So a great problem to have. You're driving demand, you want more people to come here, and we have those challenges. I'm confident that as Team Vancouver, we will work through that. Time Magazine. We actually hosted a writer from Time Magazine back in 2020. And that clearly paid off. The writer came back in 2022, was very impressed with what he saw in Vancouver. We went into the mix, and the result, of course, named one of the 50 extraordinary destinations to explore in 2023. That is a heady list to get on, significant circulation. The timing of that could not be better because of coming out of the pandemic and us wanting to compete and getting attention for Vancouver, because we are all competing, as you know, with other destinations for the traveler wallet. So very important. So that's why bringing top-tier media to the city and hosting actually pays off. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about marketing campaigns. There's a lot of work that we're doing in Canada, in the US, and across the globe. I'm going to focus on our biggest market, and that is the US market, most specifically California, our top market, the most direct air as an example, one of the reasons why we focus there. So, research tells us that Californians generally know about Vancouver. However, travel consideration is low. They have a much higher travel consideration to go visit Seattle and Portland. We need to figure out clever ways of breaking into that chain of thinking, breaking into the atom and splitting it open, and getting them to think about going a little bit north, or why shouldn't you go norther? And that's the work that we're doing. See what happened there? Go norther, boom. This is fun. Okay. So rather than just do what we've always done and just do, no, my time's not up yet. Rather than do what we always do and just do marketing campaigns, we wanted to think differently about how we really built a base of messaging and connectivity with that market. So we struck up a partnership with AEG, or the Anschutz Entertainment Group. Why is that important? Because they are the largest owner of sports teams and events around the world. Think about the O in London. That's one of the properties they own. They're the second largest presenter of live music and entertainment events, second only to Live Nation. So they're a huge group. That's going to give us some great reach and great spread. We signed a multi-year partnership, and we have properties to work with like the LA Kings, who made the playoffs incidentally this year, just saying, and the LA Galaxy, which is a great connection for FIFA. And of course, LA Live Entertainment. I think some of the creative shows at Entertainment District downtown is a massive gathering place for people, and how we show up there is unbelievable and well noticed. We've gotten lots of feedback from that. Now, I know some of you really dig campaign metrics, and I didn't actually prep any bar charts or graphs or any interesting colored things. So, Brian, can you save me a little bit, and can you whip up a chart, like a PowerPoint, something like a graph? Can you just, you have the numbers, like the actual results, can you just flick them into something? And, yeah, no, take your time. The charts, that's good. And maybe, spread it out. You could maybe think about adding an arrow. Royce's last minute PowerPoint. Yeah, that's actually not what it is, but the arrow looks good. Okay. You're actually seeing campaign results. You actually didn't make up the numbers. The number, though, that I do want to focus here on is the 1.3 on the Google Search Index. Why this is important? Because this index lets us know how travel searches are going, particularly for Vancouver. They're going up or down. We also look at the search index. Remember, we're creating awareness. We look at the search index and we compare it with other competitive destinations. As you can see, we're up 1.3% year over year. That's good growth. Other markets that we compared to that we know, like Seattle and Portland and some others, have actually declined 5.3 and 16.4%. So we are gaining some ground in the early days of this partnership. So this actually is a significant win, because if you're not in the consideration set, if you're not in the diatribe, the conversation, then people aren't even going to be thinking about coming to Vancouver. To make this happen, we had some heft to put behind the wheel. Really want to thank the Vancouver Hotel Destination Association, VHDA, and our pals at Destination Canada, who invested in the campaign and helped amplify our messaging down there, which we know impacted this. Okay. Let's talk about Michelin. And if you've heard the story before, if you haven't, I'll be really, really quick on it. Michelin Guide approached Vancouver, not the other way around. And that is significant, because when the guide approaches Vancouver, they clearly see that we have something special here, and we all know this. So when we got together with Michelin in the partnership, we really did it for two primary reasons. One, the obvious reason, using the Michelin global brand to elevate a culinary scene, which we know is outstanding here in Vancouver. But number two was sending a signal to our industry that we've got your back, we support you, and that we wanted to build careers here in Vancouver. And rather than losing culinary talent to other destinations, now that you know Vancouver is a Michelin city, why would you not want to come to Vancouver to learn with the talent here and building our workforce stability and strength? So a place where an aspiring chef can train under a Michelin-starred team. And that's exactly what we've done. Now, is it working? Well, when we released Michelin last year, the reveal, there were a number of other destinations in North America that did the same thing. And Michelin provides a report on how it tracked in terms of media and the kind of pickup that we got. And Vancouver aced it. We were the best performing destination in terms of awareness and interest in social conversations in the media of all the destinations. And if I may be so bold, our good friends in Toronto, we kicked their ass. I'm just saying. I saw the results. They are true. But as Michelin has been here now coming up to a year, because we are going to do the big reveal in October, talk about that in a second, I've had a chance to talk to servers, to owners, and everywhere in between. And it's amazing the energy that we've seen from the industry as a result of the program. Restaurants and servers and owners and others actually and sending their teams to do more, trying to be better, improving their performance, working with Michelin to find out what they could do to elevate their game. And that improves our global competitiveness. That is outstanding. However, that's enough for me. Why don't we listen to Andrea Carlson from Burdock & Co., one of the restaurants that was awarded a Michelin star. Andrea.
My name is Andrea Carlson, chef owner of Burdock & Co. restaurant in Mount Pleasant, Vancouver. Burdock & Co.'s focus has always been on using local, organic, and sustainable product. We have really great connections with a lot of local farmers here, and that is, how we build our menus that change monthly, and it gives us the inspiration for what we do. The moment we won a Michelin star was completely unexpected. I had no idea. Our motivations are not about sort of commercial success. We've always been wanting to be true to ourselves, to represent the incredible ingredients that we have in this region, and to be true to the relationships that we have with our growers, and that's what drives us. So being recognized by Michelin, which it seems is very much interested in sustainability and creative food, was incredible. I think Michelin has been an incredibly successful initiative for Vancouver. People want to participate in that brand. It's so well known. It has brought so many new people to our restaurant. It's even brought people who live in Vancouver and somehow never heard of us, even though we've been here for 10 years, to Burdock & Co. And people are like, wow, this is amazing. We didn't know you were here. How have we not known about you? So it's been really fantastic.
And so if you don't know this, Chef Andrea and her team, they are the first restaurant in Canada led by a female chef to be awarded a Michelin star. Yep, Vancouver's got talent. October, as I mentioned, will be the year 2 Michelin reveal. Very exciting to see what has happened from year 1 to year 2, so stay tuned. Okay, a lot of stuff always going on in the background in terms inside of Destination Vancouver programs and services and things that we're working on. Really, again, it comes down to positioning Vancouver in its strongest sense for visitors from near and far from around the world, really about growing networks of clients. And so within all of that work that we're doing, some very quick highlights over the past year. So Marketer of the Year, there we are. That was a real kudo, Marketer of the Year for 2022, 50th. And rather tell you a whole bunch of stuff about how we did, I will tell you one little story that I heard afterwards about the event where we awarded, which I was actually right in this ballroom. And so one of the participants that was there was asking the event organizer who runs this, and they said, we didn't know why Destination Vancouver won that award. We were really surprised when we heard that announcement. And then they said, once we actually saw what Destination Vancouver and Team Vancouver did together during the pandemic, totally made sense. There wasn't a better pick. I don't think there could be a better accolade for you, the industry, and Destination Vancouver working together to support us during a real time of need where we got out of struggling and now we are truly striving and moving on. So that was a great accolade to hear. Our volunteer program is up and running again, super exciting. We've got 156 energized volunteers, 31 new volunteers have joined us. We did a great setup session for them, and they are already hitting the ground and running. It's wonderful to see them out on the pavement again, interacting with our guests. Yay, thank you to our volunteers. Vancouver Specialist Program. So we did a major overhaul of the content in the Vancouver Specialist Program. We really needed to get it up to date, and we also needed to get it relevant to client needs. So we have been told that the Vancouver Specialist Program is now highly regarded and a really important training tool to help sell Vancouver, again, building global competitiveness. And we launched the new program last fall, 650 registrations and growing. Best Cities Global Forum. So in December, we hosted the largest gathering of clients in 3 years here in Vancouver. Included 20 international associations, 10 local stakeholders, had 4 days of education and networking and knowledge exchange, association management, and business events legacy. And legacy is the key here. We presented the results of a legacy study from business events that we had invested in and partnered with Capilano University. And that was really a tremendous success. We know that when a destination event comes here, a business event comes here, it leaves an economic impact. But what about legacy in terms of knowledge sharing and impact and changing the conversation depending on what the conference is? And that was clearly outlined in the results, not only for what a conference leaves behind in Vancouver, but what attendees take and walk away with from their time here in Vancouver. So that was a real tremendous success. 4 individual site inspectors, a whole bunch of stuff was going on. The VCC was very much involved in that. Thank you for your partnership. Dine Out Vancouver, the 21st year, the results speak for themselves. We would think it was the best dine out to date, but it really to us says that it is a testament to the culinary strength of the destination, considering the restaurants that signed up and the outcomes that we saw. So pushing forward, as we know, as it always will be, and continue to heighten, that the competition for visitor dollars is fierce and will remain fierce. And we need to make sure, and you hear a little bit of a theme here, that we continue to evolve, adapt, be nimble to get our share of that wallet and impact into the destination. So there are some major developments that are underway. First of all, identified several years ago, but we finally got it in place, the need for a destination events unit inside Destination Vancouver. We have a mighty team of 1 so far. Rohan, where are you? Somewhere in the audience here. There's so much going on with destination events. We think of the 3 leg of the stool, cultural events, sporting events, and business events. It really, Rohan's and the destination events unit is really designed to tie that up and really maximize the opportunities for our destination. So that's exciting. To our attraction partners who are so vital to the visitor experience, creating memorable moments. I've been doing a lot of great partnership with that attractions group. There's still work to do, though, to get people to go to our Vancouver attractions, and that will be a focus for us ongoing. Let's talk a little bit about member services here. Members, our members, relevance and value. We asked the board, when the board asked me to rethink the organization and all aspects of it, one of those conversations needed to be about membership. Hence the reason why we haven't been charging year over year. For you new member, you pay the fee and you've gone once. And that we're actually going to do this year. We've put out a request for information to find an organization to help us to really evaluate the membership model and really understand what it needs to do in the future, because the trajectory is changing from why it was designed in the past. We will be engaging our members to help us with that and understand how we provide better relevance and value going forward. So stay tuned for more details on the membership model review. Okay, brand and visitor journey. 2 big, gigantic foundational pieces inside the organization. Many of you, I think, in the room and of course outside the room are helping us inform the brand work. We really needed to look at that post-pandemic to see how the brand of Vancouver has changed, what the opportunities were, how we build strength in that particular area. Again, global competitiveness. We're also looking at the visitor journey and really digging into the digital part of the visitor journey. Hence my comments earlier about ChatGPT and what that's going to do to our destination and how we show up as an organization for the destination digitally. So that threw a bit of a spanner in the works, but we're going to take the spanner and we're actually going to tighten the bolts and we're going to do some really good stuff in that space so that we can close the sale with the right kinds of customers faster and really ensure that Vancouver is well positioned for potential visitors. So on those 2 projects, as it relates to both projects, yeah, that's not good. Save yourselves. I'm out of here. I'm totally out of here. Yeah, you can clap for infected, absolutely. You can clap for zombies, they were once people too. That's exciting. The Last of Us, global phenomena, filming here, season 2 in Vancouver. And that's another one of those opportunities that we can really leverage. We've already put our brains around it, started to work on it. Alberta did a fantastic job. I was talking to one of our Alberta colleagues actually just yesterday about it. Did it actually do something? And it did. Search went up for the locations that it was filmed in, and they started to see an increase in business and inquiries and so on. So I think that that will happen. We think that will happen in Vancouver. We will just do it 10 times better than Alberta did. No, I spent 10 years in Alberta, a little insider knowledge. We showed up to be competitive, not just nice. Okay, so great opportunity for us. Let's talk a little bit about Planet now. And as Vancouver continues to grow, we need to build the destination sustainably and responsibly. And that mindset has to have and be part of lasting positive impact. Now, we've got a lot of programs and partnerships in progress, improving economic, social, cultural, and environmental practices within Destination Vancouver, and working with others in and outside of the industry. So I'm going to go through some of those. In a moment, carbon emissions, really important. It's not just about what everybody else is doing, but as an organization, we need to look at our own carbon footprint and how we're making a difference. So we started tracking in 2016. We have a goal of reducing carbon emissions in our own organization by 2030 by half. We've made some good progress, but that also was because it was the pandemic and we weren't doing as much activity. So it's going to go up, and we're going to have to work hard to bring it down to make that target by 2030. The actions are actually verified by a third party called Radical Climate Smart. So they verify us against a bunch of standards. So we remain committed to do this. Okay. Global Destination Sustainability Index, or otherwise known in acronym world as GDS. DVAN is one of the 16 destinations partnering with Destination Canada business events to compete the GDS index. Why is it important? Because it is the world's leading sustainability performance program for business tourism. And what they do is you evaluate you against 69 criteria, if you will, around environmental, social, supplier, and destination management. So that benchmark is going to be released this fall in 2023, and we're looking forward to learning from that and how we can improve our footprint in that particular space. We've got a great story to tell here in Vancouver, and certainly one for Canada. Expedia and Travel Foundation. So this year, Travel Foundation and Expedia formed a partnership to help destinations develop climate plans. Now, they approached Destination Vancouver to take part in the inaugural pilot program, acknowledging the work already underway here at DVAN in our industry. So, as you probably know, environmentally conscious travel is on the rise. 9 out of 10 travelers are looking for sustainable options, and we're seeing 2-4 times more of that kind of feedback in the last little while than we ever have in the last few years. The outcome of all of this is practical training for DMOs to create their own climate plans that align actions, shared learnings, and so on. This is about evolution and progression forward. People. So we have a great and important responsibility collectively for the people in our industry, our workforce, and our community partners. And it starts by working in collaboration and supporting those said community partners so that we can attract a stronger workforce and retain that workforce that then becomes competitive advantage. The result, positive destination reputation. So we're using our opportunity to highlight 4 partnerships that we have going on that we're working with that are all doing great work to help our collective organizations. So the first one is the BC Hospitality Foundation. This is an organization, if you don't know, that supports hospitality workers facing financial crisis due to a health issue. They also provide scholarships to foster the development of the hospitality workforce. It is the only charity for hospitality in BC. Bisocial. So Destination Vancouver commissioned Bisocial Canada to do a social procurement survey of our members to benchmark the state of social procurement. We released the report and the results in March. If you're interested to go see it, one of the things we found out was 67% of our businesses practice some sort of social procurement, which means there's lots of room to improve as well. So we're going to work with Bisocial Canada to create a guide for social procurement to support and help our industry along in that journey as well. Good night out. Committed to support that work, Good Night Out, Granville Entertainment District Street Team, now for 3 years, 3-year partnership there. And as you can probably well imagine, that safety is something that is experienced differently by everyone in public spaces. So improving the destination experience for people who live and work here and our visitors is paramount. And again, another thing that strengthens our destination reputation. So I really want to thank the Good Night Out team, the G&O team. They're on the streets every Friday and Saturday night, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Heck of a volunteer commitment. The Worth Association. Now, Worth is dedicated to educate and elevate and empower women in recreation, tourism, and hospitality. And really welcomes those who identify female, trans, cisgender, queer, non-binary people, and also men who support that mission of building equity and building diversity in our workforce. They offer a lot of education and development opportunities, mentorship and networking as well, to build destination strength in our female workforce, which is really important, and also attracting new talent into our industry, which of course we still need to do. DVAN recognizes this relationship, and we empower our own team members to go on these learning journeys with Worth as well. And we really value the work that Joanna and her team, or volunteer team, are doing at Worth. Joanna, where are you? I know you're in here somewhere. Joanna, can you stand up? Joanna's way at the back there. So if you want to, encourage you to connect with Joanna if you have more questions about how you might support Worth as well. Okay, 2 other important partners as we wrap up here, Indigenous Tourism BC and GVBOT, otherwise known as the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade. So we signed that MOU with ITBC, I believe in the December of 2021. And that was really important to us because DVAN needed to make a committed effort towards not reconciliation, but reconciliation. And so we've been on that journey with them. We now have a shared resource between our teams that are really helping us build trust and build connections and cross those bridge with MST, or Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And they are so important in this overall destination story for Vancouver. They are involved in the brand work as an example, and we need them not just to be consulted, but sitting at the table with us. So it's important in terms of the path around reconciliation and improving economic opportunities and so on. So we really want to thank ITBC for being our partner in this journey. And we struck a new partnership with the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade. Why did we do that? Well, really, we wanted to help expand collaborative opportunities with other organizations outside our industry, or other organizations that don't realize that they're actually in the tourism industry as well. It also ensures that tourism doesn't sit over here with a voice, but sits at this table with our other industries as a voice as well. That we are part of the discussion fabric about Vancouver's economy and the all-important visitor economy for our destination. And so we really think that this partnership will help elevate the conversation and Team Vancouver's position in our city as we continue to grow the visitor economy. Okay, that's lots. Really want to get to the panel. So a few just quick thank yous here. So first of all, really a thank you to those of you in the room and outside of the room. You are Team Vancouver. Without you, we can't do what we do to help you. And thank you for everything you've gone through and continue to do to make this destination super competitive. When I am fortunate to be able to travel and talk to other competitive peer cities, invariably the feedback that I get back, and I'm not blowing smoke, is I love Vancouver, you have a great city. So thank you. Speaking of partnership, Destination Canada and DBC, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So the panel is going to start getting set up. We'll get some chairs. And while they're doing that, setting up for the panel, a couple of other things, resources and key dates on the screen. So those will pop up momentarily. If you're looking for a lot more deeper information, there's a series of webinars that we've got posted on the site. Have a look at that. We'll give you a lot deeper dive in terms of what we're doing, and also key dates, and those will pop up in a moment, in terms of what to expect on our plans and strategy going forward, so you'll know that. And then finally, thank you to our Destination Vancouver Board of Directors for all of your support over the past year. Now and ongoing, we cannot do this without you, and welcome to our brand new members. Thank you for joining the team at Destination Vancouver, and thanks very much to Pete and Robin who are leaving us. So another round of applause for our Board of Directors, please. And as we set up, fantastic job. Also want to thank the Destination Vancouver team who are clearly setting up the stage behind me, doing all the work on the presentation, the work that you see and don't see every day. Without them, I don't get to be up here. So thank you, team at Destination Vancouver. I'm very proud of you. And last, but certainly not least, I created none of what you just saw today. Way more talented folks. And that amazing guy and the team that he worked with, that I worked with and our team worked with, is Brian Appleby, who created this amazing presentation, took a bunch of ideas in here and laid it out. So Brian's in the back there. Brian, thank you so much. Awesome job. Okay, are we good? Are we ready for a panel? We're ready for a panel. Almost. So there will be a Slido conversation as well when we get up on the panel. So scoot around in your seats. If you need a glass of water or something, we're going to get right to the panel. Have a great conversation with our partners at Destination Canada and Destination BC. I don't know the last time, if ever, the three of us, country, province, and city, have sat together to talk about the visitor economy, specifically as it relates to Vancouver and how we're working together to try to increase our competitiveness. So really delighted to be part of this conversation. And as mentioned earlier, Haley Wooden, the editor-in-chief for Business in Vancouver, is going to be our outstanding moderator. So panelists, ready, set, go. Hey, hi, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Hi, Marcia. Haley. Good to see you.
That felt like a race to the stage, but I think we all won, right?
Yeah.
No prize?
Yeah.
Right.
It's a team.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me and not an AI to do this job. I mean, we're probably steps away from that. We talk about AI constantly in our newsroom, but not yet. Good to be here in person. Thank you so much, Royce, for kicking us off and giving that in-depth, wonderful overview of everything that Destination Vancouver is doing, what you're seeing in the industry. And I think that's a great starting point for our discussion today. By the way, as Royce mentioned, a conversation we hope everyone participates in. I will have the Slido questions up here on the screen, so please do submit questions early and vote for the ones you would like asked, and we'll get to as many as we can. But Richard and Marcia would love to loop you into this conversation now and perhaps hear from a provincial and national perspective what your outlooks are. And Richard, I'll maybe start at the BC level. To what extent is what you're seeing in line with what's happening locally? To what extent does it differ at the BC level?
Great, thanks very much, Haley. It sounds like the microphone is working, so we're in good shape. First, thank you for inviting me this afternoon. I think it is certainly the first time I've been on a panel at a Destination Vancouver AGM. Congratulations on 120 years. A few weeks ago in our office, we had a little celebration. Maybe I could get a glass of water, please. Celebrating our 10th birthday. So, and I'm really hopeful that we get to 20.
110 years to go.
I can't imagine 120. But if we get to 20, I'll be happy. So thank you. And if that's an example of what you mean by starting slow and tapering off, I'd love to see a presentation where you amp it up. So I'm looking forward to that.
Next time.
So in terms of the outlook, we're really positive. We're one of those organizations that have revised our forecast, and we're expecting at the provincial level, I don't know what's wrong with my voice today, that in 2023, we'll be back to 29.
You've got what I had a month ago.
It's really the excitement of the reforecast.
I'm hoping it's not a precursor of COVID or something, but anyhow. You've had it a few times, Mark.
I have.
We're expecting to be back at 2019 levels in 2023, province-wide, in nominal revenue. So, but you have to take into account that we've had, 15% inflation since 2019. We're expecting that this year, Vancouver will outpace the rest of the province. This year and next, we're going to see the bounce back of international markets, which started last year. Vancouver is going to benefit disproportionately from that relative to the rest of the province. The rest of the province, we're anticipating a strong year, but it might be a little slower than last year. Last year, many parts of the province had a record year, parts that appeal to British Columbians and Albertans and Canadians. And as borders open and people get braver about traveling south, and vaccine requirements aren't required to get into the US anymore, which is important for Albertans, we might see a bit of shift back to more traditional travel patterns.
Great, thank you for that. And great to hear. Kudos to Vancouver leading the province. Are we leading the country too? Marcia, tell us what you're seeing at the national level and what your outlook's like.
You know, I think the best way to characterize what's happening nationally is it's a very uneven recovery. And so we see great success in some parts of the country. The resort areas are doing really well. But fundamentally, when we look back at 2022 for a minute, the recovery really was entirely driven by domestic travel. I mean, Canadians saved us. And they traveled in droves, and it was a slow start back into the international markets. And by summer, it was looking decent. But looking out ahead, domestic will be fully recovered in 2023. We're pretty much there already. The US will recover to about 91% of, if we use 2019 as the benchmark baseline. I know Royce hates to do that, but it is what everybody else does. So, comparing ourselves against 2019, the US will be back to about 91% in 2023, but really take off after that. We're thinking by 2024, it'll be at about 112% of where we were in 2019. So that's very encouraging. US is far and away across the country our largest international market. Europe is pretty strong. I mean, overseas generally is about 2/3 recovered perhaps for 2023. I think the number's 64%. But that's very different if we look at Europe, which is coming back pretty well. We'll be in the high 70s versus the Asia Pacific region, which is still very much in the doldrums. We see a really slow restart. China has issues beyond just visitor trepidation. And so we're not hugely optimistic about our Asian markets for 2023. But having said that, we want to still cultivate those and make sure that they do start to gain momentum into 2024. Now, looking at urban centers, it's quite a different picture, and it really depends on the visitor mix that individual cities have. Most of our urban centers are not doing as well as, let's say, the resorts or in some cases smaller towns. And that was because of a bit of an urban exodus into small towns for Canadian travel. And Vancouver, by and large, is faring better than Toronto and Montreal, and certainly Calgary. And that's because the mix that you have here is more oriented to leisure than to business. So Toronto in particular is struggling because of the high concentration of business travel there. So by and large, long way of saying you're doing great and really helping to lead the country in recovery.
That's great to hear. Now I want to pick up on something you said, Marcia. Canadians saved us during the pandemic, but things are far more open now, which means that we have to compete. And as everyone's recovering and trying to get back to 2019 or whatever their peak may have been, or to surpass that, we have to be competitive. So maybe Royce, back to you. We heard a lot about the strengths of Vancouver at this point in time, despite some broader challenges. But what are you doing as a destination to really differentiate Vancouver and ensure that it's competing globally?
Wow, so that whole 35 minutes I just gave, so that's a little bit of it. But yeah, so what are we doing, or what is it that we are doing? And Marcia keyed on something that I think is really important, that has been cultivated over several years in Vancouver in how this city has come to be and transformed. And that we have a varied customer mix here. We are not hyper-reliant on business, we're not hyper-reliant on leisure, we're not hyper-reliant on VFR, visiting friends and relatives. So we have a great base to work from. We have a solid network and community in terms of our hotel partners, attractions, walkability. So all of the right ingredients, if you will, are in this city, which has helped build great destination reputation globally. Time magazine, as I mentioned, is not an accident. If you don't have your act together in a city, you don't get on that list. So our opportunity and our job is, how do you take this demand that we continue to cultivate, we continue to grow, sort of this West Coast anchor, and how do we translate that into business results, that triple bottom line, not just today, but thinking about building resilience going forward. And I think there's a lot of things we can take advantage of, like the major sporting events, pride festivals, things that are on the ground here that people will discover, and turning back into destinations advocates for Vancouver, which will be more powerful than any media we can ever spend our money on. And our biggest opportunities come up, Laver and Grey Cup and FIFA, will be opportunities for us to get that positive word of mouth for our destination, beyond standard marketing programs and all that normal marketing stuff that we do.
Richard, how about at the BC level, differentiating and branding the province, and also perhaps how you ensure that you're in alignment with Vancouver and Canada in doing that?
So maybe I'll take the first part of that, or the second part of that question first. Right? We work really closely, as Royce mentioned, it's a very complex ecosystem, both within the city, within the province. Nationally, I think one of Canada's advantages is how effectively we collaborate, work together. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way to us, but when we compare ourselves to other destinations, I think we're extraordinarily collaborative. We work very closely with Destination Vancouver and with Destination Canada and with CDMOs around the province. And we've got, I think in our minds, clearly defined roles in the path to purchase and where we play. We're moving back into our more traditional role of inspiring interest and consideration in longer haul markets and out of the short haul markets that were the only markets available during COVID. And we partner with Destination Canada and Destination Vancouver. In those markets, we try to be as on brand and on message and have similar message as we can. In terms of differentiating ourselves, I think, Royce has kind of hit on it. First is, the communication and marketing and telling our story. And if you look at, I did a presentation a while ago where I took one of our 1990s ads and our 2014 brand anthem and our marketing campaign from last summer and compared them. They're all sort of under the Supernatural brand. But you can see how the way we've presented it has evolved over time from, the postcard type of photos we used to use in the 90s to a much deeper, more emotional connection to nature in 2014. And now we're, as all of us are recognizing our culture, our Indigenous heritage, we're embracing that in our brand. So we're differentiating ourselves on our nature and our culture and how they've interacted over thousands of years to create the unique and special place we have. But equally important, and perhaps more important in the longer term, is on destination management. And taking that opportunity we have and what we have and building more events, more Indigenous cultural tourism attractions and activities that are of great interest now, and doing some of the things that Royce has talked about, building our culinary experiences in BC and bringing them to market. So leveraging what we have on the management side, the experience on the ground, as well as communicating it more effectively.
What about nationally, Marsha, at Destination Canada? What are our competitive advantages, so to speak, as we compete for travelers?
If I could, Haley, I think I'd like to just take a slightly different tack on that. We've done a lot of work with our partners across the nation at the city, the provincial, territorial levels, as well as some of the key industry associations we work with, to really examine Canada's absolute competitiveness. And so we've referenced the World Economic Forum's Travel and Tourism Development Index to sort of say, well, how are we faring as an industry relative to competition across a broad range of dimensions? And the sad story for Canada is that, in 2009, we were ranked 5th in the world for our industry. In 2021, we were ranked 13th. And it's been a bit of a steady decline. We hovered around 9th or 10th for a number of years. They do the study biannually. And so we really tried to look at all of the factors that they were examining and where Canada was falling short. And it's not a perfect index of competitiveness, certainly. No index is perfect, but we thought it was good enough to give us some good clues for how to really try to unpack that. And so the tourism leaders across the country all worked together to try to unpack that index and to look at where do we think the priorities are for Canada. And we ended up saying that there's really 7 primary levers that we need to work on collectively as a nation, all the DMO levels, but also industry associations, because none of us, including our federal tourism minister or any provincial minister, has all the tools necessary to impact competitiveness. You know, Transport Canada is another dimension, investments in another ministry. So we've got so many things that impact tourism without having all the levers. So if we can collectively try to influence those things by being on message about what needs to be done against these 7 levers, we think we can really move the needle over time. And my ambition is to get Canada back to top 7 in 7 years by 2030. But it means making a big push against those 7 levers.
It's great to hear. Thank you for that answer. I'm going to take one of the questions from the audience, and Royce, best put to you. 2023, one of your slides, had the 2nd most citywides in city history. How does the citywide pace look like for 2024 and onwards?
Really, really good. What have we done? Signed, was it 20 citywides to date, 12 citywides to date? The 24 book of business in 25 is pretty darn solid. And I say that because we talk regularly with our urban peers, Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, and we talk about what's happening in the citywide business. And we know that they're lagging behind. So not so much of a challenge for 2024 in terms of booking business, and 25 is starting to fill in. 26, 27 a little slower, but not surprisingly, the meeting planners are waiting far longer before they're sighting on the dotted line, but when they do, they're committed. So we think that this will be an evolution of booking business, but we're not worried about 24. Not really worried at all about 25. It'll fill in some more, but we are really future looking at 26 and 27, 8. Michael, is that pretty good? Is that pretty spot on? So we're closing up for 26 and 27. Okay, well, I'm done then.
And if I may, you know, that's outpacing the rest of the country, to be sure. I mean, we have something called a PACE report that looks at the pipeline and what kind of bookings we have going out into the future, which all of the major cities across the country contribute to on a blind basis. And so we know that for the country as a whole, we're only at about 60% of where we would have normally been at this point, looking 2 years out. And by the time we look out to 2026, we're down to about 50% in our pipeline build. So we are well behind as a nation, and that really speaks to things like what's going on in Montreal and Toronto, and not so much here.
It's great. It's great context. Kudos again to Vancouver, doing really well.
Well, and I neglected to mention earlier, but you know, we can have all kinds of strategies, all kinds of places have amenities and hotels and attractions and all kinds of things. In my lived experience, it's how a destination works together. Flat out, that is competitive advantage. How we work together, and I talked about, you know, Team Vancouver. We don't talk about Destination Vancouver, we talk about Team Vancouver. We consider DC and DBC part of Team Vancouver to help do this business. Without that approach, we lose competitive advantage, because planners and clients and people that we work with tell us they like working with Vancouver because we're generally easy to work with. Not all the time, everybody has some bumps, but we're generally easy to work with. But that is competitive advantage, and that is Team Vancouver. So really kudos to the group here in the room and folks that are outside of the room that make this happen. That is sincere.
It's great to hear that collaboration, no doubt, just strengthens all 3 brands in Canada, BC, Vancouver as destinations. Now, Richard, I want to pick up on something you said earlier, inflation. Everyone's talking about it. Of course, that has a big impact on the spending decisions that consumers and travelers make, not just happening here, happening around the world. how are you considering the changing nature of travel or traveler? What are some of the challenges or trends you're seeing in terms of who you consider as a traveler, what their needs might be in this context, what their needs might be in the next few years?
That's a good question. And, you know, I think for the last couple of years, we've been talking about the coming recession and the impacts of inflation on travel, and the fact is we haven't really seen it yet. And we may. But so far, you know, people are, you know, the demand for travel and interest in travel has overcome, you know, the price barriers. So I think in general, what we're seeing is more of we're seeing how important travel is to people and the other things they're willing to sacrifice to travel. We're seeing, you know, a bit of a reversion or a significant reversion back to trends before 2019 and interests of travelers. You know, before COVID, we talked a lot about the increased interest in urban experiences and urban destinations, and then COVID hit, everybody went rural, and pretty quickly you saw big cities come back to the top of the consideration list of people, where people want to go, and, you know, interest in the urban experiences that, you know, Vancouver is building out. In terms of, you know, inflation, people want to travel. They're going to be a little bit more selective about where they go, you know, based on income levels. And we've seen prices go up quite a bit in Vancouver. That's, you know, actually a good thing in one sense. It reflects the great demand for the city, and you're a little bit constrained on the supply side in terms of accommodation, so prices are going to stay high. But the fact that prices are high says that people are coming here, right? Otherwise, prices wouldn't be where they are. What you are going to get from that is a slightly different mix of visitors, right? So the more price-conscious and budget-conscious visitors are going other places. Higher-income visitors who can afford the Vancouver experience are going to have a slightly different set of interests than, you know, visitors you might have had 10 years ago. And it's, you know, you're better off going with the market and adjusting to it than sort of being in denial or fighting the market. So I think businesses, you know, attractions have to recognize that it is going to be a different customer base in Vancouver and in BC, and adjust to it and adjust to the demands and interests. And they can. There's an opportunity.
You'd also mentioned some other trends earlier, and Marcia, maybe I'll direct this next question to you. In addition to affordability, sustainability, and maybe thinking about cleaner, greener decisions in travel, Indigenous relations and reconciliation. So when you think of a traveler in 2023, and specifically a traveler to Canada, what's top of mind? What do you think they're looking for?
Mm-hmm. Well, what they're looking for still is a combination of urban experiences and the great outdoors. And Vancouver is the perfect blend of those two things. And so Canada's still famous globally for being a clean, safe, beautiful location. And that's a big demand driver for us as a nation. Around the sustainability, we're already, strangely in my view, have a strong reputation for this, and there's certainly leading cities like Vancouver in the sustainability space, but as a nation, I'm always very mindful, it sounds terrible, but the Greta clock that determines when you've hit your consumption for carbon emissions as a nation based on your population, and we hit it first in the whole world. We hit it first because of our mix of industry here and our climate, which you know, has a lot of winter warming required, but nonetheless, we have a lot of work to do, I think, in travel and tourism, and I think we have an opportunity to really be part of the change that the world needs. We are a contributor in a number of areas, in transportation, in food production and waste, and in built infrastructure. We have opportunities to change how we do business in all three of those spaces and be at the leading edge of that transition. So I would, you know, we certainly as an organization are looking for ways to do that. And there were some excellent presentations at the Impact Conference in Victoria earlier. And one in particular struck me that I think we as an industry need to think seriously about, and that is making a sustainable choice the default setting. Right now it's an option, and it's an upgrade option. And if we could make it more of the default setting, people would have to unclick that default, and I think the choices they make might be very different. So there are little things like that that we can start to introduce into our industry that I think over time could make us a great contributor to the solution the planet needs.
There's another challenge. It's the top voted question right now, and Royce, I'm going to direct it to you first. And it concerns a topic that we've all been talking about, is on a lot of people's minds, safety in our urban areas. And the question is what the industry is doing to deal with the crime and homelessness situation. And the person added, they're concerned Vancouver may no longer be seen as a safe destination. So not unique to Vancouver specifically, but certainly a challenge that's present here.
Yeah, no doubt. Safety and security, our destination reputation. I shared the story when we did the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade presentation earlier this year, that we know trade operators overseas have stopped selling Gastown and Chinatown because of safety concerns. And part of that narrative that we see, and there's lots of narratives out there as we know, is the sense of whether or not leadership is happening, whether it's federally, provincially, and at the civic level, to do something about it. And the last 4 years in particular, but even beyond that, have really caught up to us and started to roost. Now the question is, who has the ability to wield policy? Who has the ability and the dollars to impact change and make some very tough but empathetic decisions in terms of changing what's happening down there? And I think that's what we're starting to see. And they're very tough decisions that have to get made in respect to the challenges that individuals are going through. But doing nothing sends a bigger message, and that's the message that we have been sending out to our partners around the world. So this is going to be a long game in terms of these changes. There's no simple fixes and solutions. You all know what they are: affordable housing, more housing, wraparound supports, those kinds of things. That is well beyond the Destination Vancouver mandate, of course. But our role is to support those that want to bring business back to that area. The example that I gave earlier, that really supports the grassroots initiative in terms of what's happening in Chinatown. That's a great example where the community has banded together and said, yes, we have challenges. Yes, we're looking at Chinatown and the downtown east side, but we can and will do something differently. So light up Chinatown, the Chinese museum that's down there, the storytelling center, the Carol Lee investment in rebuilding and reopening the Ho-Ho, plus all of the SROs are above it. That's communities investing dollars and making change that will drive more visitation, not just internationally and locally. And hopefully from that, as visitors leave, the narrative starts to change again, that something is happening, that there are changes. And I think that's where we can be part of that voice to help along that way and support those initiatives. But if they don't, what we've learned, if the initiative does not come from that community, or the bigger initiatives do not come from the supports of various levels of government, we're not throwing in the towel here, but it's incredibly difficult for us to make the kind of changes that we need to make. But one last little piece on that, and one relationship that we are in the process of building is with the VPD, because we have not been connected with the Vancouver Police Department. So I met with Chief Adam Palmer last week, and we are going to meet and want to talk a little bit more about what the two business liaison officers that are being reassigned to the file to work with businesses downtown in terms of health and safety and those kinds of things. How do we play a role in that? How do we activate that and create that relationship? So there's another example. And then lastly, we're trying to arrange right now a meeting with our Destination Vancouver Board, Mayor Ken Sim, and the new council about Vancouver's visitor economy and all of the opportunities and challenges that we face together as Team Vancouver and the community. So we're in the process of setting up. We have not had that concerted collective dialogue together in quite some time. So maybe that reveals some opportunities that helps us better understand our role and responsibility as it relates to supporting what's happening in the downtown east side, as an example, or Chinatown.
Thank you for that answer. I'm going to, in the interest of time, sort of combine the next top two questions concerning hotels, specifically in Vancouver, but I'm sure there's also a provincial and national element to this as well. Nick from Expedia is asking, what can Vancouver do to attract and encourage the development of new hotels? And there's also a question about the impact high hotel prices might be having on Vancouver's brand. So maybe Royce, to you first, and then we'll open it up.
Boy, we wish we could solve that in milliseconds. So when you have global demand and you're recognized as a global city and people want to come here, we drive up rate. You all know that. We create compression. And certainly we joke about the weather all the time. I'm not apologizing for the rain. We're an all year round destination. We just have to spread it out. As it relates to hotel builds, and this has been a really interesting learning about how developers think. One part of the equation in terms of the return on investment for a hotel, and one of our newest board members, Chuck Weaves, in the commercial real estate space, we were talking about that and how you pencil in a hotel in terms of return on investment and what it's going to do typically falls to the bottom of the list versus office space and other uses for commercial properties. So it becomes a hard sell. But once the hotel is built, then they're holding on to it, then it's starting to turn in the dollars and create the impact. And so, part of our challenge is to get that story out there. We understand there's about 6 or 7 hotels in consideration right now for Vancouver, so we're not devoid of development. The other part of that is, and this was one of the things, I make this sort of joke all the time, when I first started I was told 2 things, like within a week of being here. 1, don't cancel the Christmas party. No, I'm not kidding you. And then number 2 is, we have gotten a notorious reputation in terms of working with planning in City Hall as it relates to approvals for commercial projects, in particular things like hotels. So we have work to do with the reputation. Mayor and council seem to be very focused in on that because developers will go where capital can make money, and if they can't do it here, they will push off hotel builds elsewhere because destinations are looking for accommodations.
Marcia, Richard, is this an issue that you're noticing at the national or provincial levels?
Sure. We certainly are noticing it. This question, what can one do about it? A lot of it is local and local regulations in terms of attracting hotels. And I think we're seeing a fair bit of investment in other parts of British Columbia where land is more accessible, competition against residential or commercial use is not as great. What we can do is perhaps more indirect. One of the thrusts of our new strategy, which we released end of February, and by the way, we're having a webinar next Tuesday at 1 p.m. with a Vancouver Coast Mountains take on our new corporate and marketing strategies. But one of the drivers is to try to reduce seasonality, right? And when we reduce seasonality, we're doing 2 things that will help hotel investment. One is we are leading to greater capacity utilization through the whole year rather than just parts of the year. So there's a higher return on capital. And second, it will create more year-round jobs. It'll be presumably easier to attract labor to permanent, long-term, year-long jobs than seasonal jobs. So indirectly, I think through both our strategies at both the provincial and national level, we are increasing the return to an investment in accommodation. There's a lot that happens on the ground in terms of local government regulations and local conditions that also affect investment decisions.
Okay. Well, we've had a very hard look at the investments, one of the 7 levers that I talked about really to become more competitive, and we've been lagging, frankly, relative to the rest of the world as a country, not just as a city of Vancouver. And so seasonality is a key part of that, trying to return ROI. There's a little bit of a different mix right now, I think, than there was pre-pandemic in the hierarchy that we see of land use because commercial space is now becoming a little more available than it was perhaps pre-pandemic, so that may help. But I think continuing, as Royce said, to make the case for why tourism matters to a community and the knock-on effects and benefits that it has to the business climate of a city and everything else means that you have to have increasing capacity for hosting events, for attracting business travel. And right now, most of our country is quite constrained, and with the exception of perhaps a small motor hotel in a smaller community, this is a 6 to 10 year proposition to try to expand capacity. And so really the growth opportunity for Canada is in better utilization of the capacity that we have through seasonality, rate growth, other things that will also be beneficial to attracting investment. So it's a bit of a circle, and it's a long one, but there is no quick fix for this But getting a friendly municipal regulatory environment is certainly key.
I'm conscious of the time, and no one ever wants to be the only thing between a reception and me asking questions, but maybe we'll ask one final question for the group, coupled with perhaps a takeaway, parting words for our guests. There's a good question here. Do you think the tourism sector is given enough priority by all levels of government from a policy and investment perspective? And I would maybe pair with that, so it's not just a yes or no. Depending on the answer, what's the path forward, or how could that be addressed? And any final parting words for the leaders in this room today? Richard,
Okay.
start with you.
I think we often feel that we're not getting appropriate attention from government given the size of the industry with respect to policy and regulation. And we've got to tell our story better about how important tourism is. But when we actually talk to residents and we talk to government, they recognize the size of the tourism industry, the importance of the tourism industry, and I don't think that's really the barrier. I think one of the barriers is they think tourism just happens. So when you think about other sectors that governments try to grow, they recognize they need to do things. They need to build pipelines, they need to build port facilities, they need to open up lands for harvesting or whatever. So they recognize that, yes, if I want to grow this industry, I have to do X, Y, and Z. And with tourism, they haven't quite made that connection as well as they have with other sectors, that if you actually want to grow tourism, you need to do A, B, and C. And I think that's for us to do sort of quietly and behind the scenes, and for advocacy organizations like the Tourism Association of BC and for Destination Vancouver, is to be more open about what it actually takes to grow tourism and why it's worthwhile. I think we can all sort of work on going past the tourism is important to, and this is what you need to do. I think the other thing we need to do, and we do public perception surveys every year. We presented the findings at the Tourism Industry Association conference, Tourism and Hotel Association Industry Conference at Prince George about a month ago. And we really sliced and diced it this time and really understood what could help move the needle in terms of resident support. And by and large, residents support tourism. The vast majority of residents recognize that tourism adds value to their communities and they support growth of tourism. But when you look at the people who are sort of on the fence or are perhaps not supportive of tourism, it's more around, are these really good jobs, as opposed to, are you bringing revenue into my community? And it's around sort of environmental and social impacts, which are becoming more and more important. So convince me that tourism is actually helping to regenerate the environment in my community, that it's adding to the cultural diversity of my community. So I think those are the stories that we have to tell in our communities, not focus on, well, tourism is important, as we have for the last 20 years. I think we have to get more sophisticated.
Marcia, what about for you? You outlined some of the goals that you're working toward. Is shifting the narrative, policy, investment part of achieving that?
Yeah, I think Richard and I, for as long as I've been in the tourism space, have found this to be a puzzle, that the relative importance that tourism seems to play in the dialogue that occurs with policymakers is not where we'd like it to be. And I don't necessarily think it's kind of aligned to pure investment levels in our industry, because if we look across all of the parts of our industry, my federal minister is fond of saying, I am one of 24 ministries that impacts tourism. As I said earlier, everything from land use to parks to culture and arts, et cetera. And if you line up all the investments that are made in different parts of our sector, we actually do quite well. We fare well relative to other industries. And I think a good example of that is all the investments that were made during COVID in trying to support parts of our industry that were impacted, which is, of course, everyone. But there was $23 billion that either directly or indirectly supported tourism in this country. And that was pretty significant relative to many of the other sectors. And we deserved it because we were really hardest hit, longest hit, et cetera. But where I think we can really make a difference, and I'm completely aligned with Richard's comments on this, is so often there's investments being made in our country, our province, our cities even, that are what I indelicately call random acts of kindness. They are, investments in one-offs that aren't necessarily linked to a corridor strategy or are linked to building a bigger attraction that echoes the way visitors experience a place. So they rarely go to one city, they're usually traveling between a number. How is that overall corridor experience being strategically developed and invested in significantly over time, rather than having, pots of gold dropped around our country or our province that all are beneficial but aren't maximizing the return that we could have on those investments. So we're really trying to help our shareholders see how we can invest more strategically in tourism and through destination development planning, of course. And I think that will start to prove out the ROI that government needs to see for its investments, because right now the ROI is sprinkled everywhere and they can't really see it, and so it doesn't necessarily have get the same chat factor in policy circles.
That's a good point. Royce, final word to you. What's your take on the priority tourism gets and maybe the path toward getting it better recognized for all that it contributes?
Well, really appreciate the comments Richard and Marcia made, and I would be on the same page. When we were doing some significant house cleaning in Tourism Vancouver, we came across a brochure, and it was from the early 1980s. I still have it. And that early 1980s brochure was the value, the importance of tourism. So we've been talking about that storyline for decades. No wonder it really hasn't changed. So I think what you're hearing here is, how do we change the narrative about tourism to make sure that we sit at the adult table, that it is part of a greater strategy around economic diversity? How do we change that? One of those sayings that we use is that there's tourism policy and that there's policy that impacts tourism. How do you have that conversation under that lens with decision makers, whether it's civically or provincially or nationally, to understand that the role that it plays, as you've said, you're just dropping bits and pieces of money anywhere into an industry of industries, then it's easy to forget about us because it just sprinkles out and you don't see the impact. I think our opportunity to have an industry that almost disappeared and finally become visible, to change how we have the conversation, will make a big difference. My lived experience from my time in Alberta to here, though, on a positive note, and this is not Alberta bashing, by the way, not in the least bit, but after a decade there of having the conversation about tourism in all kinds of different ways and how important it is, and then coming over here in the midst of the pandemic, I can tell you that we are having different conversations here. Maybe not always when we want them or exactly the results that we want, but my lived experience is the conversational narrative here is more advanced in BC. It is different. We're talking about different things, and so we have a good base to work from. I don't believe that our visitor economy or industry in Vancouver or writ large BC happened by accident. It did happen from a series of interesting decisions. So I think we're better than we think we are sometimes, but clearly we have a lot of work to do. And I think that is rooted in changing how we talk about this important sector of our economy.
It's a great point to leave off on. Royce, Marcia, Richard, thank you for answering all of our questions. A round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.